I want to be her when I grow up. Hi, I'm Maddie.
And I'm Abigail, and this is
Two writers.
Many Wrongs. We're very, very excited. Maddie is freaking out a little bit because today we have one of her favorite authors, Bethany Jacobs, on. Bethany Jacobs is a former college instructor of writing and science fiction. In 2019, she left academia so that she would have more time to write. When not working on her novels, she likes reading, cooking, writing fan fiction, which I'm definitely going to ask her about, and snuggling in bed with an audiobook. She's the winner of the 2024 Philip K. Dick Award, as well as a finalist for awards from Worldcon, BSFS, DragonCon, and Locus. Thank you so much for being here, Bethany. We are super excited just because we've interviewed some other people before, but it's been a lot of, like contemporary fiction, a couple of romance writers, whatever, and you're our first like sci-fi author, which we're over the moon about. And then on top of that, like sci-fi opera, which is what Maddie writes.
Okay, cool, cool,
Yeah,
cool.
so we're totally going to be picking your brain over,
Yeah.
all of that. But one of the first things we want to ask is like, how did you even start planning a space opera trilogy? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, well, first off, thank you guys so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. How did it start? So this book is a little different than a lot of how my books started in that I usually thoroughly plan my books out before I start writing them.
Mhm.
And this book I actually started writing before I planned it out,
Yes.
which is very unusual for me. And so I just sort of like sat down and was like, just like write something, just see what happens. Um, and as I wrote, it was kind of like, I kind of like this. I think I'm going to keep doing this. At that point, I started to really kind of plot it out and think in more detail about it. And then the first book, These Burning Stars, it it's very much a house of cards plot wise. So there was a lot of outline revising and rewriting, just tons of rewriting with this
Hmm.
book. So it wasn't a book that just sort of like I planned it and then it went on its merry way and everything went smoothly, which none of my books do that. But it was but but it was a little different in that I just sort of started from this place of like I need to remind myself why I love writing, so I'll just write some weird story and see what happens. When I wrote the book, I wanted to write it as a standalone because I was hoping to get it published, and it's
Hmm.
easier to shop a standalone than to shop a trilogy. However, I had ideas of how it could expand as a trilogy. And then when I sold the first book, they came back and they were like, do you have other projects? Could you imagine this as a trilogy? Like, what do you think? And I was like, yeah, I can imagine it as a trilogy.
Nice.
So from there, books 2 and 3 kind of evolved based on very loose ideas of what the rest of the trilogy could do, and then obviously really honed in on that. So
Well, that's
That's
that's that's so interesting because like I've read all three books now and very satisfied. But like it seems like you were had like this master plan all along. So it's really interesting to see that those came later and how well you structured it and played into the things you'd already set up, those hooks you set up in the first book. Because it really does read like you planned the whole thing first.
yeah, I mean that's great to hear. I mean the thing is as I wrote the later books, was I very closely studied the first book to make sure that would happen.
Yeah.
So I didn't just go completely rogue with books 2 and 3. I looked at book
Right.
one and I
Of
said,
course.
what are the natural next steps in this story? What happens in book one that I could then take that and turn that into a seed for something bigger? And so I am a very detail oriented, plot oriented writer, and so I kind of was obsessed with making it as um, as natural and clear and well constructed as possible, as opposed to like the Battlestar Galactica uh, uh, method, where a lot of people talk about how they had a great idea for a couple of seasons, but they had no idea what the rest
Mhm.
of the series was going to do,
Yep.
and it shows. It just goes like completely off the rails. I mean, Game of Thrones, it's the same thing. You
Gosh.
Mhm.
look at the last couple scenes of Game of Thrones where they didn't know what they were doing because they didn't have the books, and it's awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's an issue of craft. You
Mhm.
can't just be like, oh well, I can do anything, so I'll do whatever I want. It's like, no, it has to fit
Mhm.
within the world and the context that you've created.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you accomplished that beautifully, really.
Thank
Um,
you.
you talked about being very plot driven and plot focused, but you also have these really well-rounded, realistic, incredible characters. How did you balance having so many different points of views throughout your series?
Yeah, so it's funny because it starts, book one has three POVs, then book two
Mhm.
has four POVs, and then book three has like seven or eight
Yeah.
POVs. So, so I kept making it more and more difficult for myself. But something that some one of the ways that I describe my character work is I'm a very psychological writer,
Mhm.
by which I mean I'm very interested in what's happening in characters psychologically. I'm very interested in their inner life. I'm very interested in motivations, past, and how the past influences them. And so the reason I think why my characters tend to be complex and well rounded
Mhm.
is that I'm not just making them chess pieces on a board to move the
Mhm.
plot forward. I see their background and their personalities as essential to developing the plot.
Hmm.
Um, so it's kind of like, if we're going to go from point A to point B plot wise, then there has to be a clear reason why this character would do that. They can't just be a vehicle for the
Mhm.
plot. And so I find that well developed, interesting, complex characters actually drive the plot.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you do say that you're plot oriented, but I don't think the plot works without those strong characters. And
Agreed.
Mhm.
especially going back to the third book, the six, thinking back, like would any of this happened?
Yes.
And that just
Mhm.
it shows like how integral that these
Mm-hmm.
characters are to the plot. Like I think that
Mm-hmm.
shows like a well-developed character. If your character wasn't there, none of this would have happened.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too, and I think that we have to think about the way that people operate in the real world.
Mhm.
I try, even though it's space opera and it's space fantasy, and people are like, oh well, this isn't realistic. It's like, well, no, I mean, I'm very interested in how real people behave and
Mhm.
how real people influence the world around them, and so that is, you can explore that in any genre. That's not
Mhm.
limited to literary fiction. Whether or not you're writing romance or you're writing mystery,
Mhm.
um, if you think about the way real people would respond to these situations, you can produce something that's more believable and more resonant for readers.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's what makes us grounded because all
Mhm.
these wild things are happening in the sci-fi world, but these people are people we can understand and relate to.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and Maddie and I were just talking about how the beauty of fiction is that we can talk about these very real, serious issues and kind of have a veil over them to make them more palatable for people, so that as they're reading it, they are subconsciously connecting with
Right.
the struggles that these characters are going through that they may never experience in real life.
Yeah.
And obviously, your books tackle really big, difficult issues,
Hmm.
like genocide. How do you decide to attack those kinds of problems in this sci-fi world? Like, is that what you set out to accomplish, or is that kind of what you found yourself drawn to through these characters in this plot?
Yeah, I mean, so I was an academic for over 10 years. And my scholarship focused specifically on gender and race studies in 20th and 21st century women's fiction.
Wow.
Um, and including women's science fiction. So I am a huge fan of Octavia Butler. And I don't know how familiar you guys are with Octavia Butler, but her work is very much a response to the experience of Black women in the 70s and 80s.
Yep.
Even though it's set in these sci-fi worlds, it's responding to a very specific historical context. And as a writer who was a scholar, who did so much research, who learned so much through my own journey as a white woman, trying to understand my complicity and my place and my responsibility within a racist, sexist, world.
Yeah.
It's sort of become kind of the air I breathe, and that I can't not think about it. I can't not put it into my writing. And so it wasn't like this conscious decision of like, I want to talk about genocide.
Right.
It was just sort of like, I have this situation where there's this people group who they are the people who make this fuel essentially that powers this world. What would the history of such a people be? And based on our own world, we know that it would be oppression. It would be, rape and pillage, and most likely genocide. And so it made sense for that to arise out of the story. What's interesting is that, and I write a little bit about this in my afterword in book 3, is that when I wrote the book, discourses about genocide in the public sphere were not nearly as prevalent as they became the months after my first book was published. So it wasn't, the book was not a response to any specific genocide, but rather to all of the genocides.
Yeah. I think that's something that people who aren't writers don't necessarily understand, is that they think these books come out as a response. It's like, no, it took years to write and research and whatever. Like, it just happens to coincide with these real world issues that are happening.
I started writing this book in 2018, and a lot of the issues that we're seeing right now were already happening in 2018. But it wasn't like, I'm going to respond specifically to this thing. It's like, no, I've been working on this for years. And as time has gone by, it's been more and more influenced by the actual social context. But so.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You go for it, Maddy.
I was just thinking it was interesting that you're talking about the living, the air you breathe of, women's studies and racism, and trying to like your complicity and stuff as a white woman. And I'm thinking like Chono is such a really good example of being a part of that system, but wanting to change it and having like that white guilt about being complicit and not wanting to be and seeing it's wrong, but also being aware of how she had damaged because of the role she played.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the thing with Chono is that, so the thing about white guilt is that it doesn't actually do anybody any good.
No.
White guilt doesn't help communities of color. And it certainly doesn't help white communities. What white people are responsible for, what I think I am responsible for, is trying to learn and grow and center the voices of people of color, and do what I can to fight against these forces, and have humility, and be willing to be corrected and things like that. And what Chono faces is she does have all of this guilt, but she ultimately knows that her guilt doesn't help anybody either.
Right.
What she has to figure out is how to use the power that she has in this world, where she ultimately becomes lionized by many people, to affect change and to affect good. And it doesn't necessarily turn into the life that she wants, but it's the life that she is obligated to lead, and the struggle doesn't end. I think a lot of what happens in the discourses around white guilt is there's this feeling of like, well, if I'm just good enough,
Yep.
then I can get rid of that white guilt. If I become anti-racist enough, then I won't feel guilty anymore. And this is why white guilt is of no value to anyone, because it's not a process that ends.
Yep.
Ta-Nehisi Coates recently spoke in a very disturbing conversation with Ezra Klein about how the fight for justice and for what is right in the world, like, might not be completed in one's lifetime, but you have to fight for it anyway.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think in Chono's case, she very much has to come to terms with the fact that, like, she may never make up for the things that she's complicit in, but that's not actually the point of her life.
Right.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. This is why I love fiction and sci-fi so much, because we have these characters that we can so deeply connect with and like help us learn things about ourselves, because it is so much like learning to live in the discomfort and keep moving forward. Like, you're not just going to find this easy solution and then move on with your life and be like, oh no, I fixed that. It's fine. Like, like, that's never going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think, I think the best fiction is the fiction that doesn't give us those simple, sweet endings. And which is not to say there's something wrong with so for example, romance, right?
Yeah.
Like, the whole point of romance is that you get the happily ever after, and that is fine.
Yeah.
But I do think that romance is obligated to engage with the real world. There's lots of discourse around, particularly white romance, that doesn't engage with issues that I think all genres would benefit from engaging with. But that doesn't mean that you can't have happy endings. I just personally feel in my own work that I wouldn't know how to write work that wasn't engaging in these discourses.
Yeah,
it would be boring to me.
Yeah. Talking about, the not differences, but of, kind of sci-fi and romance and these different genre fictions. There is always kind of that discourse of like what constitutes real fiction or literary fiction, or, any of that kind of BS. When Maddy and I were in grad school, she had a horrible mentor who told her that sci-fi was not real writing. How do you combat or address people who look down on genre fiction, or do you even like waste time on them?
Yeah, I would say that I don't.
Perfect.
I'm not interested. It's not my job to educate people.
It used to be.
Yeah, right. That's true. And when I was a professor and taught science fiction, I did do that, right? But it's not, I'm not interested in like suffering fools in that area. There is a long history of denigrating genre fiction. And the reason why genre fiction has been denigrated is because it's traditionally been popular fiction. And historically, what is popular is considered unserious. And so when you are someone who has committed to a vision of yourself as intellectually serious, it challenges your ego to imagine that the popular and that people who engage in the popular might have their own kind of intellectual seriousness that rivals yours, with your PhD and blah, blah, blah. And so, the thing is that science fiction and fantasy has been literary fiction. There's Frankenstein, which would have been considered popular fiction at the time, is considered one of the greatest works of literature. That's the easiest example that we can come back to, right? There's all kinds of important literature that has engaged with science fiction themes. and it's we return to Octavia Butler. Octavia
Mhm.
Butler wrote work that I think could easily be described as literary, but
Mhm.
I don't think we should use the term literary as the arbiter of value.
Mhm.
Love
I
that.
sort of dismiss the idea that we should measure these other genres and their value against this idea of
Mhm.
literary fiction. A lot of literary fiction is incredibly boring.
Yes. Oh my
A
So
lot of
God.
true.
a lot
Yeah.
of literary fiction is incredibly navel gazy
Mhm.
and self-important and vapid.
Yeah.
Just because you are quote unquote literary fiction does not mean you are good fiction, in the same way that just because you are science fiction doesn't mean that you are good fiction. We need other ways of defining good fiction. And one of those ways is its impact on people.
Mhm.
Um, and a lot more people have been impacted by a text like The Hunger Games than a
Mhm.
text like A Little Life.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh
That
God, a
doesn't
little
mean
life.
that A Little Life doesn't have value to many,
Mhm.
many, many, many people, and
Yeah.
I would never denigrate that value.
Mhm.
No.
But um, why is it more valuable than a
Yeah.
text like The Hunger Games, which you can say what you will about it being, oh, it's YA fiction. This is an important anti-war text
Yes.
Yep.
It's
that
so good.
was in fact incredibly complicated in the
Mhm.
things it was saying about war and about the quote unquote savior and adventure
Mhm.
story.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Mhm.
I'm not interested in proving
I
to
love
that
it.
mentor that
Mhm.
sci-fi and fantasy, and also that's such a tired perspective.
Right.
I think that creative writing mentors and instructors are increasingly moving away
Mhm.
Yeah.
from that,
Mhm.
as it becomes clear that there is a lot of genre fiction out there of huge cultural value and significance. So I'm so sorry that
Yeah.
that happened to you. That person sucks, and they don't know what they're talking about.
Thank you. I'm gonna clip this entire thing that you just said and
Uh-huh.
play it back to myself whenever I hear her voice
Good,
in my head.
good.
Yeah.
Tell that voice to shut up.
Yeah.
She doesn't know what
Right?
she's talking about.
Thank you. See, we
Yeah.
just need Bethany Jacobs to say
This
that for
is
you. I've been saying it for
healing. Thank
years.
you.
She wouldn't listen to me. No,
Yeah.
I love that. And I think that, like you were talking about with the Hunger Games, I think YA gets the same bad rap that
Mm-hmm.
this other genre fiction does. But I also feel like that is what's truly impacting and shaping
Mm-hmm.
cultures and generations into
Mm-hmm.
thinking deeper about these issues. I mean, I have a little sister, she just turned 17, who read Hunger Games for the first time and is like so into it. And of course, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I read it, when it came out and I was in middle school or whatever. But she is so like, oh my gosh, like anti-war and anti this. And I'm like, yeah, babe, like that's what
Mm-hmm.
radicalized me,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the thing is that the early days of YA radicalized a lot of people,
Yeah.
particularly young women. For
Hmm.
so many young women, those texts were the entrance into political consciousness.
Hmm.
And is there a lot of bad YA? Is there a lot of bad
Absolutely.
writing? Is there a lot of bad mystery in science fiction? Sure, there is. But then you get a text that like The Iron Widow, which came
Mhm.
out a couple of years ago, which is again has is incredibly important to questions of race and war, and the people who are reading it are empowered and educated by that, I think.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked a lot about kind of your writing journey and stuff like that, but I want to transition a little bit to your publishing journey. So how you talked about that you wrote the first one as a standalone book.
Mm-hmm.
Was that to get your agent, or was that after you had already acquired an agent?
No, I had not yet acquired an agent when I wrote that book. So I knew that I wanted to pursue getting published more seriously.
Mm.
And so I knew that this was a book that if I could pull it off, I would potentially be querying.
Mm.
My querying journey was different from a lot of people's, in that I was advised. So a writer friend of mine named Mike Mame read the first 3 chapters of the book and was like, "This is really, really good." And he was the first person who had read any of it, and so I didn't know if it was good.
Yeah.
So to have him be like, "No, this is really, really good," I was like, "Oh," and he said, either go on submission with this now or submit it to this program called Pitch Wars.
Pitch
And
Wars.
Pitch Wars sadly
I
isn't
know.
Yeah.
around
Mourn it. We
anymore.
mourn it.
Brenda Drake, she spearheaded that incredible contest, which allowed new writers to be paired with mentors, to revise and polish the book that would then be placed in front of agents. Would, it was a showcase. They would be able to go and look at those. And so I did that. I worked with an amazing editor named Jake Nichols. They really were incredible. We worked closely together. We really polished the book. We submitted it to the showcase, and I ended up getting multiple offers of representation.
Oh, hell yeah.
As you should have.
Thank you. And so I chose to go with my agent, Bridget Smith, who's with Jabberwocky Literary Agency. And one of the things was we had posted about the book on Twitter, and my editor at Orbit, Priyanka Krishnan, responded to it because she knew Bridget, and she was like, "Send this to me. I'm interested in this." So as soon as the book was ready to go on submission, we sent it to multiple places, and we sent it to Priyanka. And like 4 months later, Priyanka offered on it. Wow. So my journey was actually really weird in that it happened really fast. It happened all of a sudden. It's like I got accepted into Pitch Wars. I got a literary agent. I got a book deal in less than a year. And
that's
for most writers, that's not what happens, right? And I had been on submission with another project while I was in graduate school, and it just didn't go anywhere, and I wasn't able to commit to my writing very much at that time because I was in grad school, and so I didn't have as much time to write. So it's not like I was never in the trenches. I was in the trenches with other projects, but this particular project was a totally different experience from what most people go through. Doesn't make it better or worse. It just makes it different.
Yeah. How did you decide to go with the agent that you chose since you had multiple offers?
It was really difficult. Everybody I talked to, I really liked. At the end of the day, Bridget is, she had the most experience, and she shared my vision for the book. So there were like agents who I loved, but they were newer, or there were agents who I loved, but they had a slightly different vision for revising the book ahead of submission that I didn't share. Any one of them I would have done great with, I think. But Bridget was just sort of the sweet spot. She's with Jabberwocky, which is one of the biggest literary agencies representing sci-fi and fantasy and genre fiction. So it was just sort of a leap of faith, and it worked out.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So I always lament on this podcast. I'm trying to write a trilogy that is a space opera. And the thing I lament about a lot is I feel like I'm not smart enough to write the book I want to write.
Ridiculous.
And then because I read your books, and I was like, I am never going to be as smart as Bethany Jacobs.
Oh my
She's
God.
just brilliant, and I don't understand, how do you write something like this? It's so good and so well written, so smart. And did you ever feel like you weren't smart enough to write the book that you wanted to write?
I always feel like I'm not smart enough to write the books that I'm working on. I'm working on a new book right now, and I'm like, you can't do this because you're not smart enough to do this. Now, I will say that I've been writing novels
Mhm.
since I was 8 years old. My first chapter book was a ripoff, not a ripoff, but it was set in Narnia. You
Ah,
know, like I have been writing for
mhm.
over 30 years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I've written many, 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 many books.
Mhm.
And I would not want to go back and publish any of them until this book, because they were terrible, you know,
Yeah.
and some were more terrible than others. And as I kept going, I got better and stuff
Mhm.
like that. Um, but for a lot, I talked to a lot of writers who are like, you know, they're working on their first book, or they've only done a couple of books, and they're like really insecure about their skill level or their ability to write the book. And it's like it's a craft. It's not an
Mhm.
innate talent.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
have to work on it. In my case, I've worked on it for most of my life, and I still can get better, and I
Yeah.
still feel like, so, you know, it's funny because to hear you say like, oh, you know, these books are so smart, they're smart. When I was writing them, I didn't feel smart. All I could see was the flaws in the
Yeah.
books.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I recognize that I'm a woman of my craft.
Mhm.
I have trained for this. I've worked very hard, and I am a good writer, but
Mhm.
that doesn't mean I don't have insecurity around my writing and my intelligence.
Okay, Maddie, you have to clip that part out
I know,
too.
I know. That was
You know,
very
it's
beautiful.
sort of like syndrome is not something that people with absolutely no talent and nothing to actually contribute to the world don't have imposter syndrome.
Yeah,
Okay. The
unfortunately.
people who have imposter syndrome are the people who actually care about what they're doing and want to get better at it and do the work and have something to say.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean that you start off an amazing writer, but it does mean that you have the capacity to grow and do something incredibly smart, incredibly valuable. And just the work that you're doing to write this series is making you better and better all the time. So, so to people who are writing, I always kind of say, write this book, write the next book, keep writing new books. Don't be too precious about this book. It's just part of your training. You
Mhm.
know, it's just part of how you're growing. If I was precious about the past, about the books that I've written in the past, and like I have to make this book good enough to
Yeah.
be publishable, I would never have moved on to the book that was publishable.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it, you know, trust the learning process, and give yourself credit.
Okay. Oh well. Thank you.
Yeah.
I love this so much. I'm watching Maddie like trying to hold it together. It's great. Um, just to lighten things up real quick, I do want to go back. So in your bio, you talk about writing fanfic. You just talked about having something set in Narnia. What fanfic do you enjoy writing? Can we
Oh
do
my
we get
gosh.
to know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's so I primarily wrote. I haven't really written fan fiction in a
Mm,
few years because I've been so busy with this
Right.
trilogy.
mhm,
The fan fiction that I primarily wrote was Carol, which is based on The Price of Salt and was a 2015 movie,
Mhm.
starring Kate Blanchett and Rooney Mara. A very important lesbian text, and very important to me. And so I've written tons of like just incredibly smutty Carol fan fiction.
I love
But
it.
I've also written, so one of the earliest and most important texts of my whole life and influences on me was Xena Warrior Princess.
Oh my God,
Oh,
yes.
Um, so
Oh,
important to me
so good.
as a
yeah.
creative and
Mhm.
as a queer woman.
Yeah.
You know, as like a 13-year-old, I was, you know, obsessed with Gabrielle. Like I wanted to meet Renee so badly.
Yep.
I didn't understand why. It took me years to be like, oh, you had a huge crush on her because
Yep.
she was fucking hot. A while to figure that out. So
Mhm.
Xena is a text that I've returned to over and over again for 30 years. And so I've
Yep.
written a lot of Xena fan fiction as well. Um,
I love that.
so yeah, I'm a huge fan of fan fiction. I actually think that a lot of the best romance
Mhm.
out there is written in fan fiction spaces.
Yeah.
And I'm all about that smut, like again, it's like
Mhm.
I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting. what you want,
Mhm.
So I've written tons of that. I developed a great community through writing fan fiction. I haven't had time to write it as much recently,
Mhm.
um, but I love it. I
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
writing.
That's so fun.
I do want to touch on smut a bit because I do want to say that there are some very beautiful sex scenes that you've written
Oh, thank you.
in these books. Like I just like because there's like a sweetness and
Hmm.
a romance to them, and I really appreciate seeing that because it does
Yeah.
kind of like temper like the like intensity of the books, and then you have these very sweet,
Mhm.
so romantic moments with these characters. It
Yeah.
makes me
And
so happy.
I will say, I'm joking about writing smut, but I think that smut can be incredibly romantic.
Mhm.
And the fan fiction that I wrote and the fan fiction that I have most loved is incredibly tender.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean that I don't like the raunchy stuff sometimes, but like I think that romance and sexually explicit content, um it can be as good a vehicle for exploring character and exploring intimacy as anything else. And so that's what I tried to do in my fan fiction. And I think that's what resonated for readers of my fan fiction. I'm actually thinking about um, dabbling in publishing romance,
Oh
actually.
yes,
Because
Fun.
I love it. I think that it's been very important to me. The romance texts that I have loved have been very important to me, um, and so I may try to go
Mhm.
that route as well
Nice.
under a different name or something like that.
I love
So,
that. When we had the pleasure of interviewing TJ Klune, we talked to him
oh
about
yeah.
his use of like romance in the fantasy realm, kind of
Mm-hmm.
mixing those two things together. And it's always so interesting to me, what gets denoted as romance and then what
Mm-hmm.
gets denoted as sci-fi kind of thing. So I think it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting that you bring up maybe using a pen name or something.
Yeah.
Do you think it's because like publishers and readers have a hard time making that jump of authors going from one genre to another, or would you just want a clearer like denotation between the two genres?
Yeah, it's not like being embarrassed for readers of my
Right.
sci-fi to know that I write romance, but I think that it helps publishers. It can help
Yeah.
publishers in their branding, and it can help readers because I have a lot of readers who are not interested in smut or
Right.
romance, right? And I would hate for a reader of my science fiction who doesn't want that to be
Hmm.
like, "Oh, she's got this new book, I'm going to read it," and be like, this isn't what I was looking for,
Yeah.
and it's helpful for me to think about them as two different personas,
Hmm.
yeah,
um, who can, because like the romance that I write, it's not sci-fi, like it's
Yeah.
contemporary,
Oh,
romance.
okay.
And so it's very different from my other work, but
I That's so cool that you're able to flex all of these different muscles
yeah, and it
within
is a
the writing
flex.
world. Yeah, I mean, it's awesome.
I mean, I think part of that is that like
Uh,
I don't consider my writing like strict science fiction. I'm
mhm.
very influenced by a vast array of genres. I think a lot of hard sci fiction critics and readers would read my books and be like, "Well, this isn't real science fiction," because
Uh,
it's not hard sci-fi. It's not as interested in the mechanics aspects of technology, as a lot of sci-fi is. It's very influenced by fantasy. It's very influenced by mystery and horror. So my writing and my reading has been of such diverse genres that it's actually not that difficult for me to do that kind of code switching, because I've kind of always done it. Although I don't have a history other than fanfic of writing like romance novels.
Of course.
I do think it's really interesting because my work too like leans heavy into fantasy. It is sci-fi. It is not hard sci-fi. There's like magic in it and stuff and gods and like I always have a hard time seeing my book fit on a shelf. So that's why I love your book so much because I see who I want to be when I grow up in these books because like they fit. Like it is sci-fi and it is fun, but it's also you see the fantasy, you see the horror, and you see the mystery, and I love that combination. And I am not a romantic. I don't really like reading romance, but like I am very compelled by the romance in your stories, and it has me like kicking my feet and giggling like a little girl when I'm reading a romance. So I love seeing that mix of genres. So
well, and that, you know, what you're talking about, the sort of science fantasy is what a lot of people are starting, you know, we're seeing increasing numbers of science fantasy being published. Meredith Moring published a book called Red Sight. You know, the Locked Tomb series, I would very much consider them. Yes, I see them behind me. I can't wait for the fourth. Very much science fantasy. We're seeing increasing representations of fantasy elements in science fiction. So the gender blending is becoming more and more normalized within the genre, and I love to see it.
Man, I love that.
Yeah. See, you're gonna have so many comp titles when you're ready to start querying, Maddie. It's gonna be great.
It's gonna be great. Science fantasy. Is that a term you think I could use in my query letter? Science fantasy?
Oh, 100%. 100%. If it's a sci-fi book that also has fantasy or magic in it, you can 100% bill it as science fantasy. Star Wars is science fantasy. This is what so many people don't understand is that Star Wars is science fantasy. So it, you know, there's a lot of it.
Yeah. I think too, like that's like kind of there's always this war about Star Trek versus Star Wars. But to me, like the reason Star Wars was so popular is because of how much it leaned into the fantasy size. Because that's it's an easier thing for people to entry into than something like Star Trek with all their fake science and reversing polarities and stuff.
And you know, the thing about the argument between Star Wars and Star Trek is that like they're completely different. They're almost incomparable.
Right.
You know, and so like we can have a war about like which one you like better, like that's fine. You know, people have one or the other. But any kind of conversation about which is better is a non-starter for me because they are just not the same thing. And they each do what they do really well. You know, at least the old school stuff does.
Yes, tell me about it.
I'm not as familiar with all of the new school stuff, although I've heard that Andor is
so good.
It's
so good.
I want to watch it because I've heard that it's just it hits hard, and so
it's fantastic, and it's one of those things that causes the conversation of like, how is Disney producing this and then going and supporting the stuff that they support or like doing the stuff that they're doing? And it's just like, how did the same entity create and publish Andor? But that's a side conversation, you know. Anyway.
I hear you on that
like,
one.
But like that's one of the things that I tell my students all the time is I'm like, just because you don't like something or because you don't vibe with it does not make it bad. It just means that you're not the target audience. And like trying to tell readers that on a grander scale or just consumers of media to be like, it's not bad. There's a huge audience that really connects with it because that's the target audience.
And I think that is something that's so important for creatives to understand, particularly if they publish. Like I'm very so I don't really read reviews of my work. Like I don't go on Audible, I don't go on Amazon and look at reviews of my work. Because there are lots and lots of people who aren't going to like my books. And like there are lots and lots of people who are going to have takes on my book that I would be like, that is completely wrong. You've
Right.
completely misunderstood the text. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. It's like,
Exactly.
why would I torture myself with
No.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I try to be very comfortable with the idea that, like, my book is not for everyone.
Hmm.
My writing will not be for everyone, and that's okay.
Hmm.
And that doesn't actually reflect on the value of the book. So
That's
You
right.
there
have
are
such like a healthy
genuinely,
mentality.
No, I
It's so
I mean,
admirable.
I do have a healthy mentality, but that doesn't mean that I don't struggle. I
of
struggle
course.
a lot with thinking
Hmm.
that my work is not good enough. I struggle a lot with the fear that my career will not continue. I worry about, am I going to be able to keep doing this? Am I going to maintain a readership? One of the things that's really hard when you write a trilogy is my first book sold pretty well.
Hmm.
My second book didn't sell much. And that's
Wow.
because sequels don't sell as well as first books. And my third book probably won't sell very well. And so there's a lot of anxiety over, am I being marketed? Am I going to find
Hmm.
my audience? Am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to get better? Or am I going
Hmm.
to, was These Burning Stars the best thing I'll ever write? Like,
Hmm.
Gosh, yeah.
so, even though I can talk reasonably and truthfully about these things, it doesn't mean that I don't have a lot of self-doubt and a lot of struggles about
Hmm.
this. And again, I think that if you care about something, you can't help that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
that's why my wife is so important in my life, because
Mm.
she is the one who just believes in me no matter what. We said for the years before I was published, when I was just like, this will never happen, I'll never do this, I'll never be good enough, she would tell me, I will hold the hope for you. You don't have to hope. You don't have to have hope about this, but I have hope. I believe it will happen. And so she is the reader and the critic who I value the most,
Hmm.
because she's also just a brilliant woman in her
Yeah.
own right. She's leagues smarter than I am. And so it's important to have um, readers and critique partners in your life you trust like that. I've known a
Yeah.
lot of people who've had critique partners who are just mean.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you don't need that shit. You need people who will tell you what's real.
Yeah.
You need people who will say, this doesn't work, or you can make this better, or what have you.
Hmm.
But you need people who you believe are 100% in your corner. Because otherwise, it's just you in an echo chamber of your own doubts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We interviewed our husbands on the show because Maddie's husband Josh is like her biggest fan, and just he spent the entire episode like hyping her up and being like,
Uh-huh.
finish the series so that I can read it,
Yeah, uh-huh.
He's like,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
care. He's like, I don't care if you get published, but I need you to finish
I need to
this.
know what happened. Yeah.
Exactly.
And
No, I mean,
he writes fan fiction of
does
my
he?
book.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's incredible.
That's the
That's
kind of hype
incredible.
you
I
need,
love
somebody to
that.
believe
That
Yeah.
is
in you, even
that
when you
is
don't
the
believe in
hype that
yourself.
we need when we're
Oh my
doing
gosh, I
this.
love that. I do want to talk a little bit about, you were in academia, obviously, for a long time, and then made that leap to decide to leave to
Mhm.
spend more time writing. Maddie was in a similar situation in like the corporate world and decided to leave to focus on writing.
Mhm.
What was that jump like for you? When did you decide to make that jump, and like how difficult was that transition?
Yeah, so I mean, I transitioned to working in the ed tech field.
Right.
I decided to leave academia because the job market was really, really bad.
Yeah.
And by that, I don't just mean that there weren't jobs, I mean that there weren't good jobs. And at least in that I was looking for.
Mhm.
And I realized that the work of academia, trying to write scholarship, teaching full time, being on the job market full time, that the dream of being a professor was making all of my other dreams impossible.
Mhm.
Mm.
Everything else that I wanted in life, I wasn't able to pursue because I was so consumed with all my time was taken up by this one specific dream. And so I decided that it wasn't healthy to continue in that way. I decided that I wanted to be able to have more time. And so it became very important to me to find a job that would where my evenings and weekends would be free. Not all corporate jobs allow you to do that.
Yeah.
This has been a very firm thing with me. You can call it quiet quitting if you want, but I think that's bullshit. If you're paying me 40 hours a week, like that's
It's
what I'm
called
going to do.
boundaries.
Yeah, it's not that I'm not going to work hard or be an asset to your company, but it's not going to. I'm not going to let it consume every waking moment in the way that academia did.
Yeah.
The transition was difficult in that going to a 9 to 5 after having a teaching and scholarly schedule is very disorienting and very difficult. I was really lucky in that the job that I switched to, I made a great group of friends and I moved to a city that I really loved and I met wonderful people. And so that was really great. I'm currently out of work. The job market again is really bad. It's the work that I've done in education technology is not work that feels as meaningful to me as teaching did. But it definitely is work that gives more security when it works out. And so, it's not something that I idealize at all. It's not a panacea. But it was what worked for me and what I needed to do. And within the year of leaving academia, I had written the book and was, very close to publishing. So it
Nice.
worked out for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still very deep in the world of academia,
Mhm.
but it's adjuncting at this point, so it's
Mhm.
terrible pay, but
Yeah.
also, it's only two classes and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. But
Yeah.
it's so hard balancing that with finding the time to write and
Yeah. Yeah.
commit to all of that. So I really admire you for taking that leap because it's a scary thing. I mean, I feel like academia is almost cult-like in that they, praise the teachers of, oh, you're doing all this extra hard work and you're making such a difference and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, meanwhile, the teacher's dying trying to do
Yeah.
all this stuff. Um,
Yeah, and I mean, I have amazing friends who have stayed in academia. Some of the people that I respect most in the world are academics. But I've come to view academia as very much like a toxic relationship.
it is.
And it was not a relationship that I wanted to stay in. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
why.
Good for
Yeah.
you for making the leap because it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see if I can get another job. But,
It's rough out there. It really
maybe if I
is.
start self-publishing romance, I can make it work or something.
Heck yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Listen, we'll hold the hope for you.
there
We
it is.
believe
Well,
in you.
thank you, thank you. That really means a lot to me.
Is there anything that you miss about the academic world or like being with students or anything?
I totally miss teaching.
Yeah.
I totally miss you know, forming relationship with students, being able to talk about serious things and being able to I don't miss grading,
No, no.
but I definitely miss the classroom.
Yeah. I have a stack of papers waiting for me to grade after
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
podcast
It's not
right
fun.
now.
It's not fun. Yeah.
It's not the best. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Maddie, did you have more of your like sci-fi specific questions you wanted to dig
I have
into?
like 7,000
I know
questions to
you
ask you, but
do.
I'm trying to keep it chill. But I do want to like take a moment just to be like, I absolutely love your books. I'm not putting on airs for this. It really has inspired me to get back to my writing. And when I had like given up hope on myself, and this has like made me like, I want to write this book, and has really, really inspired me, and in a way that other books haven't in a really long time.
Yeah.
So meaningful to me.
That means so much to me. Thank you guys.
When we found out that you were coming on the podcast, I called Maddie, was like, "You'll never guess." And I'm pretty sure she cried, like getting excited.
I
Like, yeah.
literally literally was like jumping around the house,
Yeah.
dancing. I was so
Okay,
excited.
now you're just making me blush. That's enough.
I
Thank
just
thank you guys.
I grabbed these two books at the same time and I
Uh-huh.
could not stop reading them. I just was like I haven't been this excited about a book in a long time. And so this
Thank you
was
so much.
so good. You ended it so well. I was
I'm
so
so
excited I got to have it early. It's
I
so
know
good.
it's really
So
cool
satisfying.
because people are starting to get arcs of it. So people are starting to read it, which is like nerve-wracking, but very exciting. So I'm really glad that it hit for you. That
I mean, you stuck the landing. I that's
thank
always
you
like
so
a
much.
that's always a fear with a trilogy, right? Like,
Hmm.
am
Yes.
I gonna stick I'm very satisfied with the way it ended. And it
That
feels
is that is so great to hear because yeah, I was very afraid about sticking the landing. So that makes me very happy.
there's some choices that you made that I was so happy that you made because they weren't like something that I would have thought, but I'm like, this makes so
Mhm.
much sense for this character, and I'm so
Yeah.
glad you did it this way.
Yeah.
But it also feels like there's life that goes on after
Hmm.
this.
Yeah.
And so like, I feel like you could write another book, but I also would
Mhm.
be very happy if you never did write another
Yeah.
book in this series. Please
Yeah.
write more books. But
Yeah.
I think like I love that. I think that's something that's really important when I think of trilogies is
Mhm.
or books just in general to feel like the book goes on after you close it.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's funny because there are other ideas that I could do in this universe, but whether or not that will ever happen, I don't know. I have an idea for a novella that I'd really like to write, which is about how Lise and Jin meet. And
I love
so
them so much.
so I do hope that someday I get to write that. But uh but there but the thing about writing and the thing about being a creative, which is my favorite thing, is that there's always new stories to write. And so I'm really excited, if not terrified, by the book I'm working on now. I have ideas for other projects for the future that I'm really excited about. So, you know, I hope that whether or not I continue to be published, I know I'll continue to write, and that is, and I do think that I'll continue to be published. But I have another book deal in the works.
Yay.
But yeah. So, but
Nice.
thank you
I'm
so much.
there.
That means
I'm
so
there.
much to me.
We have a little bit more time, so I'd love to get like two more questions in
Yeah.
before we have to go. But the first one is you've mentioned so many other sci-fi writers of this time. I'd love to know like what does your writing community look like? Do you have other like published contemporaries in it, or is it all like close friends, beta readers? Like what does your writing community entail?
So my main two critique partners are Ren Hutchings and Rebecca Frameout, who are both published writers.
Mm-hmm.
Rebecca Frame, and they're brilliant. Rebecca Frameout wrote a fantastic, like sci-fi romantic comedy that came out last
Oh.
year called Lady Eve's Last Con. Like
Uh-huh.
I cannot, um,
Adding it
I,
to my TBR right now.
I can't say enough about it. Ren Hutchings wrote a book. It came out a couple of years ago called Under Fortunate Stars. Fantastic. She has a new novel that just came out in the same universe called An Unbreakable World. She just had a both Rebecca and Ren have published novellas. So they're fantastic. And they have been really important critique partners for me. But then there's just a lot of other writers in my community, published writers who I've become friends with through my agent, through publishing. Victor Manibo, Allison Epstein, Aaron Evans, Fonda Lee, just so many incredible writers who I'm honored to be in communication with now. And so I've just been really lucky. I did not have a writing community before I before this series, and so it's been one of the coolest things about it.
Mm.
That's one of the things that Maddie and I struggled with. I mean, it's why we started this podcast, is because once we left grad school, we really felt that gap of a writing
Mhm.
community and have been trying to build one
Yeah,
together over the
yeah,
years.
yeah. I mean, it's like obviously I'm part of that community now for you guys, and the more that you talk to people and meet people and put your writing out there, you'll meet those people, and they're just an invaluable part of the process, is to have those friends who
It's
understand what you're doing. So,
It's so true. Like I know like Abigail will text me when she gets a rejection letter or like for when she's querying her novels. She's like, got a
uh-huh.
rejection letter and I feel it in my heart.
Yep.
Yeah,
And I
it's
text her when
hard.
I get rejections and it's so nice to have somebody like because I could tell my husband and he's like, "Oh, I'm
Mm.
so sorry," but he doesn't get it.
He doesn't get it. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. And that is the hardest part. And we can talk about having a thick skin, and like that's true, but also there's nothing wrong with feeling your feelings about that.
Mhm.
And for feeling the disappointment, I think uh I think the thing is that I always say is you have to come back to what you control, and that's the writing.
Mhm.
You can't control publishing. You can't control whether you can do things to make your query and your writing better and
Mhm.
to increase your chances of representation of being published. But really, you can't control the publishing industry. The only thing that you can control is the writing that you yourself are doing. And so, maintaining that perspective and reminding yourself that you actually enjoy the writing. And if you're not enjoying it, you know, do something else. Like that's
Mhm.
why I started writing these Burning Stars. I was working on another project. I was not having fun. I had lost all perspective on why I was even a writer. So I decided to write for fun again. And that's where this project came from. So that's a really an important thing to keep coming back to, is the writing itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something I've learned too is like just remind yourself why you love. And for me, that means reading
Mm-hmm.
or
Yes.
like books that inspire me, like
Yeah.
yours,
Yeah.
or craft books that like
Uh-huh.
kind of bring me back to like I actually just really love looking
Yeah.
at words and moving them
Yeah,
around.
uh-huh,
Yep.
absolutely. Read, watch TV, watch
Mhm.
movies, listen to
Mhm.
audiobooks, like immerse yourself in stories.
Mhm.
And that's like one of the best ways to grow as a writer.
Absolutely.
I mean, you've had so many nuggets of wisdom in this episode that I kind of feel like our last question is almost irrelevant at this point.
Okay.
But we always like to ask, what piece of advice would you give an upcoming writer?
Like the if they were going to take one thing away from this, what would
Yeah.
you take away?
I mean, I think it would be always return to the writing. I think it would be that that you can pursue publishing, whether it's traditional publishing, self-publishing, whatever it may be. But you could publish a book that's amazing, and then it doesn't necessarily sell as much as you want it to. Or you could publish a book and it's a huge success, and then your next book doesn't sell as well as the first book did. You can win awards or you cannot win awards. You can get good reviews or you cannot get good reviews. You can have a supportive publishing team or you cannot have a supportive publishing team. All of these are things that you can't control. Um, but if you love the work, always come back to the work. Like it's that old thing of like, fail, try again, fail better,
Yeah.
like work on your craft, work on what you love. That is the best thing that you can do for yourself as a writer.
Yeah.
Love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
because that's why we're here. You don't you don't put yourself in this situation unless you really have, at least I feel like you don't,
Yeah.
unless you like
Yeah,
really have that
yeah,
passion and drive to do it, because it is a lot of work.
Mhm.
yeah. And I think people who go into it with this sort of romanticized, like, people will say, like, oh, I could write a novel. It's like, fucking try. It's
Yeah.
not, it's not easy. And if it is easy, you're probably not creating very good
hmm
work. This was so fun. Thank you
No,
guys.
no, you have no idea. This was
Thank
absolutely
you. Thank you
incredible.
so much.
Maddie wants to be a novitiate and just follow you. Like, it's great.
I'll try
So,
not to be as grotesque as Essex.
yeah. Bethany Jacobs, her Kindom Trilogy, the first book, These Burning Stars, is absolutely fantastic. And the last book in the trilogy, This Brutal Moon, is coming out.
In December.
I'm Abigail.
And I'm Maddie, and this has been
Two writers.
Many Wrongs.